Hi, and welcome back to part 3 of Learning About Ironheart Multiplayer with myself, Matt, and Charlie from Parable Games.
Hello.
So, in this video, we're going to take a bit of a closer look at checks and rolls. So, we've covered stats already. Charlie, can you explain a bit how the stats interact with the rolls you're making in the game?
Absolutely. So your stat number that you have for either your pilot or your mech is going to determine how many d6s that you're rolling when you make a check. The more dice that you're rolling, the better you are at something, fundamentally. So when you're rolling your dice, when you're rolling your d6, we're looking for 4 pluses as successes. And we're wanting to avoid ones, as ones count as what we call malfunctions and cancel out those successes. So you can roll a bunch of 4s, a couple of 1s, and they may cancel those out. In terms of like critical successes, if you roll a 6 and you're matching the number of successes that you need in that check, you get a critical success. So in combat, for example, that doubles damage and restores 1 point of sync bond. Outside of combat, that has a chance to restore even more sync bond as a reward because damage isn't factoring in.
Okay, so you have variable number of successes depending on how hard the check is?
Absolutely, yeah. So if something's like really, really easy, you may only need 1 4 plus in your pool. You only need 1 success. If you're going up against a mech that's really tough and heavily armoured, they may have a higher DC or dice check kind of rating that you need to get past. So they could have a dice check rating of 3, so you need 3 successes in your pool in order to, punch them or hit them with like a laser blast.
Okay, so let's say you and your mech are trying to, or your mech is trying to hold up a building.
Okay.
How would you approach that?
So, kind of, if I was approaching that as the GM, I would automatically be like, if you're rushing in with your mech and you're trying to hold up the building, it's going to be a mech brawn check. So let's take Ocaron and Hammerhand 5, the mech and pilot pairing from the quick start as an example. So I know that Hammerhand only has a brawn rating of 2. It's not the highest. So in that case, he would be rolling 2 dice to try and succeed. If I was a bit worried that I was going to fail that, or that it may be a hard check, maybe it needs 2 or 3 successes, I could spend one of my sync bond points to engage some of my pilot and one of their attributes to add to the roll. So Ocaron, for example, could be sat in the cockpit of Hammerhand and be kind of offering words of encouragement. And helping his mech muscle through holding up this building as civilians escape. So that, I would say, if a player posited that, would be a pilot charisma check. And we could look at Ocaron's pilot charisma and make a decision of how many of those points are going to enter the pool. Spend a sync bond point, and I'm going to say Ocaron can use his full 2 charisma points and throw those in. So that then would give us 4 dice overall by spending a sync bond point to roll rather than just 2 if we rolled with our mech. And we love to roll them with different coloured dice to see who's succeeding where and who's helping out who a little bit more, which is why we have the multicoloured dice in our dice sets. So
just to help that story along a bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just to make sure, like, if your mech is absolutely struggling, then we can kind of see that the pilot's coming into the rescue, or maybe actually the mech is overwhelmingly kind of taking the lion's share of the weight whilst Ocaron struggles what to say. It allows us to build that narrative, through dice, which is what we're all about.
And when you spend that sync bond point, I take it what you said, you don't automatically get to add all of the dice in your pool to the check. It depends on the situation and how you're role-playing it.
Absolutely, yeah. It depends on kind of the situation, how you describe it, the combination of the attributes and how you're using them. So in this one, I was kind of say, like, give them both, give the full whack of the pilot's pool there because I like what they were doing. If it feels like it's something that's a bit weaker or in the situation contextually wouldn't help as much, then you may only get 1 or 2 dice from that pool. So it's always up to the heart for them to decide that.
Okay. So very simple system then. You roll a number of dice equal to your stats. You're looking for 4s. 1s are bad, 6s are good.
Yes, absolutely. And you can spend
Perfect.
sync bond as well to re-roll those ones and have a chance at an even better success, or try and just stop them affecting any successes you have.
But your sync bond is very limited.
Yes, so at the start of the game, kind of when you're level 1, you start out with not that much sync bond, so 3 sync bond points. And it is not the easiest thing to recharge. So you can recharge it through positive, like, interactions with your mech and good cooperation, usually outside of combat. Completing encounter objectives as well can restore sync bond. But recharging sync bond is something that's not easy. It takes time, it takes effort. Therefore, it is a very precious resource. So don't go spending it all at once.
Like every relationship, things require work.
Yes,
And the more
absolutely.
you work at it, the better you're going to be a unit.
100%.
So that is obviously a non-combat situation, rescuing things. Combat is a thing in the actual Union in this post-war world. How does that work?
So it works very similarly. Like it's very easy to pick up. So any enemy that you're trying to attack has a DC, has a dice check rating like any other check. So say we have our basic little drill miner mechs, they may only require 1 success, whilst your prospecting overseer that's a bit chunkier and is in a bigger mech may require 2 or 3 successes. You'll be attacking those enemies with weapons. And those weapons often dictate what your attribute is that you're going to be rolling. So, for example, if I'm going to go in swinging with a large, like, magma axe with my mech, that's going to 100% be mech brawn. If I'm using a kind of sniper rifle, it would be mech reflex. Maybe I'm using a bit of a stranger weapon, though, that uses telekinesis in some way, and that might be mech tech. For example.
Okay.
So that in terms of what you're rolling, which pool you're rolling is always dictated by your weapon when you're making an attack. And all we're doing is we're rolling that pool and we're seeing if we beat the enemy's DC, and then your damage and the effects of your weapon are then applied. And that is, it will bring down their mech shielding, so a mech's health, and if they reach 0, they're out of commission within the combat.
And if you're not suited, I assume that is your character's stats being used and the character's health that's potentially being diminished.
Yes. So pilots do have
pilots.
Yes. So pilots do have health as well. So encounters where you're outside the mech and you just have your pilot are a bit rarer, as a lot of the kind of skirmishes happen within mechs. But we really wanted to make sure we were providing a way to role play as the pilot, have some kind of threat to the pilot if they were putting themselves in a dangerous position, or having the mech and the pilot having to do different things because the situation calls for it. So it works exactly the same way in terms of how it works, but we're looking at entirely at the pilot's stat line instead, and looking at the weapons that they can use.
So a sci-fi bar rule is still on the cards then?
Exactly, because the mech can't physically fit inside the bar, so, your pilot is going to be on their ones there.
Perfect. Okay, so that covers everything for rolls, how to make checks. And in our next video, we're going to take a quick look at encounters and where you're going to apply those checks.